Okay, welcome back. Thank you very much. I hope you had the opportunity to have some lunch and find somebody you didn't know and chat with them. This is part of the networking going on. I'm delighted now to hand over moderation responsibilities to Professor Wen Kilama. Dr. Kilama is the founder and managing trustee of the Africa Malaria Network Trust in Tanzania. But as we like to call him, the grandfather of ethics in Africa. And I say that not because of age, but because of his contribution. I can't tell you that over the reunion, so many of our alumni said the first time we heard of bioethics was when Dr. Kilama said this, when Dr. Kilama's Amanet said that. It is incredible what a powerful influence he's had and his network has had. So it's a great pleasure, sir, to welcome you to moderate this session.
Thank you very much, Adnan. I'm sorry, I don't think that I deserve even 1/10 of what he said, but I'll bear the cross and try to do what I can. Now, we are going to have quite a group of people who have been privileged to know over the years, and they are going to share with us quite a lot of experience in capacity development for health research ethics, and I will add in Africa. And I'm not going to delay you, but to inform them and inform the audience that we will set 20 minutes per speaker, except for the last two who will share the 20 minutes equally. So without further ado, I'll call upon Paul Ndebele, who is the Director, Medical Research Council in Zimbabwe, to speak about 15 years of capacity development for research ethics. Where have we come and what remains? Paul, karibu.
Thanks very much, Wen. Good afternoon, everyone. I have known Professor Kilama for so many years, and as Adnan put it, we refer to him as the grandfather of research ethics in Africa. And in my talk, this is going to become very, very clear. I'll start by complaining that I'm going to talk about 15 years of capacity development, and yet I'm given only 20 minutes. So this is not enough, but I'll try and compress my talk so that I fit into the 20 minutes. So basically in my talk, I'm going to touch on some bit of history, but at least Barbara in the morning touched on the historical element. Then I'm going to highlight some of the research ethics building initiatives across Africa, and then try and answer the question, where are we now? And then also try and answer the question, what remains? And then try and opine on what we can do in order to move the agenda of research ethics in Africa further. As has become obvious, the 1990s witnessed a significant increase in the amount of collaborative research across Africa. And as was also mentioned in the morning, most of such research was reviewed and approved by ministries of health or by research ethics committees that had been conveniently established for the purpose of just approving those studies. So during those days, it was very, very common for ethics committees to issue what I would call blank checks, right? You issue an open approval. You are going to have a study running over 6 years. We issue with an approval. You can use it for 6 years or even extend it to 9 years. No one is going to mind about that. But also, as was mentioned during the morning sessions, there were then discussions around the 1990s about the ethics of international research, particularly looking at research in the area of HIV prevention. But then, in Africa, there was then a seminar on health research ethics that was organized by what was then referred to as the African Malaria Vaccine Testing network, AMVTN. This seminar was held in Arusha in November 1999. So Professor Kilama here was then the managing director for this AMVTN, which then shaded its form to become the African Malaria Network Trust. So this seminar was held to identify the needs and priorities for research ethics review and monitoring within sub-Saharan Africa. And there were reports that were given by country representatives. And these reports highlighted lots of challenges that ethics committees were facing then. Just to go through some of them, there were some ethics committees that were functioning inadequately. Some of them are those that were established by way of convenience. Ethics committees that were under-resourced, so there were no funds, no computers, no phones, no budgets, and so forth. But then there was also the issue of weak or outdated legislation where it existed, but also in lots of cases, there were no legislations or policies at all to support the work of research ethics committees. In some institutions, the ethics committees were so overworked. In some institutions, there were low levels of awareness of research ethics guidelines. And in a lot of institutions, there were no people who were trained in bioethics or research ethics. So there were several other studies that were conducted after this seminar, and these have since confirmed these challenges. So we are looking at growing research enterprise within Africa, but then growth in research is not accompanied by growth in research oversight mechanisms. So we are looking at a situation here where poor communities are exposed to exploitation or even harm. We are looking at increased vulnerability. The investments in research ethics in Africa were not accompanied by investments in research oversight mechanisms. There were no universities or tertiary institutions that were offering health research ethics courses. But we also have to remind ourselves that there were other stimulants within Africa. We're looking at the 1090 report that was issued by CORED that has been mentioned earlier on, but we're also even looking at the SIOM's guidelines during the 1990s with their emphasis on justice considerations. We're looking at the National Bioethics Advisory Commission within the US with their report 2001, and also important recommendations that came through this report, that there was need to develop and implement strategies that assist in building local capacity for designing, reviewing, and conducting clinical trials in developing countries, and also that there was need to build the capacities of research ethics committees in developing countries to conduct scientific and ethical review of international collaborative research. The Nuffield Council's report was also mentioned by Nancy during her presentation. So now, looking at some of the research ethics capacity building initiatives, I'll highlight the initiatives by Amanet. So this is why we look at Wen as the grandfather of research ethics, and I'm hoping he will give me 5 more minutes because of that. So Amanet received a grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for supporting the strengthening of ethical review in Africa. And through this large grant, we held several workshops in several countries across sub-Saharan Africa, and more than 200 researchers were trained through these workshops. Some of them were the basic ones, and some were advanced in nature. And research ethics committees, about 20, were awarded some grants amounting to about $50,000 US for capacity strengthening. And these grants could be used for office furniture, secretariat support, or in-country workshops. But Amanet also then proceeded to develop online courses. We're looking at a basic course and also an advanced course in research ethics. And then we come to the FABT-funded initiatives. So here we're looking at FABT International Center being one of the main players in the research ethics capacity strengthening or development across sub-Saharan Africa. So FABT supported 9 training programs for trainees from sub-Saharan Africa from 2001 up to 2012. And 2 additional programs have since been added. We are looking at ARESA, which issues graduate diploma, and then University Makerere, which is just taking off now, which is going to issue a master's degree through their program. So more importantly, we now have various publications, as highlighted earlier on, coming out from the proceeds from all these various programs. There were about, I can't remember how many papers that were written recently, 14. So 14 papers that were written recently on the FABT-funded program. So basically, I'll highlight issues coming from one paper that was looking at programs covering sub-Saharan Africa. In this table here, you can look at the various programs that were operating between 2001 up to 2012. We're seeing here that the FABT programs have contributed 275 trainees to various African countries, and we're looking at trainees that are at different levels from diploma to masters, but also to PhDs. Looking also at the distribution by gender, we're looking at 160 males and 115 females. So there was some effort to ensure that women were represented in most of these programs. In this slide here, we're presenting the figures by country and also by a training program. I highlighted some 3 figures there. There is the 72 for Nigeria, right? Nigeria is the most populous nation in Africa, and obviously they would get 72. But there is also South Africa with 76, so that's good and fair. But then look at that one with 1, right? So there's just 1 person in that country who has gone through these programs. So what are we saying about that 1 individual? Those 76 can actually get in touch and work together in improving the situations in their own countries. But we're looking at this one who is operating in isolation. Now, trying also to look at comparing ourselves to other programs in the other regions, we're seeing that Africa actually has the highest number of trainees through the FABT funded programs. In this map of Africa here, you can also see that there are several countries with no trainees at all, and yet research is being conducted within those countries. So we're still saying we have achieved so much, but there is still more that needs to be done in order to ensure that all countries across Africa have some capacity to implement research oversight. We have also had EDCTP, which is the European Developing Countries Clinical Trial Partnerships, such a mouthful. But they have been supporting research in malaria, HIV, and TB. So EDCTP provided funds for strengthening research ethics committees in Africa, and to date, they issued out 75 grants ranging from 50,000 euros to 100,000, and these grants were awarded to institutional or national research ethics committees, and they were meant to strengthen ethical review and monitoring of research by those committees. And more importantly, some of these grants actually included some in-country training component. So a lot of the graduates from the various FABT programs were actually the ones who were taking a lead in terms of providing the in-country training. So we are looking here at mass production coming through the 275 graduates that came through the various programs. Wellcome Trust has also been supporting some work in research ethics. They support ethics symposia. There are several conferences that have been held across Africa using support from Wellcome Trust, but they also provide some small grants for research in the area of research ethics. They're also providing some support to research on ethical issues through their centers of excellence. And in Africa, we're looking at one center in South Africa and another one in Kenya, that's in Kilifi. And a lot of this is actually coordinated through the Ethics Center based at Oxford University. So these groups are doing a lot of work on community engagement, and so far they've written several publications. There are several other initiatives that are worth mentioning. WHO through TDR has also been running some workshops on research ethics, including an online course. But WHO also through AVAREF, which is the African something about AIDS vaccine regulatory ethics forum. So this is a group of 26 African countries so far, and AVAREF is providing support to drug regulatory authorities and research ethics committees in those 26 African countries. We also have to mention that there are so many in-country training opportunities that are being offered through the expertise that has been built over the years. Also, I would like to mention Prima Scholarship program that ensures that every year some individuals from Africa come to the US to participate in discussions on how they can improve research oversight across Africa. In Europe, we also have the Erasmus Mundus Scholarship Program that provides training at master's level. So this is done through 3 universities, one in Belgium, one in the Netherlands, and one in Italy. I know several African fellows who have gone through this particular program. Now, trying to look at all this that I have mentioned now, you can then tell that there are so many improvements that have occurred in the African research ethics landscape. We're looking at the development of leadership at institutional and national levels. So now in so many countries, we can boast of leaders in the area of research ethics at institutional or national level. We also have trainees that have participated in the development of guidelines within their own countries. If you look at Nigeria, for example, we know definitely that there are fellows who have participated in the development of their codes there. In a lot of African institutions now, we've got dedicated positions that have been established for research ethics. But in our own way, as research ethics committee administrators, we've now established an association to ensure that we support each other as we look at how we can improve research ethics committee administration. Through one of the EDCDP grants, we now have a software for research ethics committees that is referred to as the Rhino software that ensures that researchers can submit their proposals online, and reviews can also be done online as a way of improving the processing of proposals. One of the EDCDP grants was looking at the mapping of research ethics committees and regulatory authorities across Africa, and to date, about 166 research ethics committees have been mapped. The cooperation between research ethics committees and drug regulatory authorities has improved significantly as a result of the confidence that has been built as a result of all these initiatives that I've highlighted. So on the whole, we can say that all these initiatives have resulted in significant improvements in research oversight systems within institutions and also within countries. Right now, there are so many peer-reviewed publications and book chapters by trainees and others on issues of research ethics that are of relevance to us as African countries and other developing countries. And as has become evident, there are several grants that have been awarded to African scholars on research ethics. So, are there still some gaps The answer is definite, yes. I would say there are still some limited grant opportunities and limited grant writing skills amongst the trainees. Hopefully with time, this is an area that is going to receive attention. Looking at us as a continent, I would also say we need a continent-wide body for coordinating individuals with an interest in the area of research ethics. As I mentioned earlier on, there are no trainees in some countries and institutions. We hope that this is something that is going to be attended to as we proceed with capacity building. And for some trainees, there is the issue of career path. So some look at research ethics as a dead end. So once you get yourself into that area, there is nothing for you. So what's going to happen with such individuals? For some individuals, they have not been provided with room or opportunities for putting their training into practice, because in some institutions, there are always issues of resistance and other challenges. There are also issues of sustainability of these activities at national and also institutional levels. So, having looked at how far we have gone, what's then the way forward? I would say there is a serious need for strengthening research ethics capacity across Africa. We have achieved something, but we still need to work towards further strengthening of capacity. There is need for more training at higher levels so that we address the issue of leadership across Africa. So we're looking at training at a PhD level. We also need to seriously look into issues around self-sustainability of programs to ensure that they become a permanent feature. There is also need for ongoing and detailed follow-up of trainees and their career path is also something that is very, very critical. Yesterday, or the past 2 days during our reunion, it was so obvious that as trainees from our specific program here at Johns Hopkins, we have done so much good, and we think that we need to highlight our successes so that people know that there is a lot of good work that is going on across Africa. It also emerged that there is need for peer mentoring so that people do not feel isolated. They feel that they have all the support that they need in continuing with their work. And as I mentioned earlier on, there is need for a vibrant continental body. So we're looking at a prima Africa, so that now across Africa we can work together towards ensuring that we have equivalent protections across Africa. I would like then to end by acknowledging FABT International Center for all the support, Wellcome Trust, EDCTP, Amanet, FABT program directors, and specifically our program directors who are right here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul. I didn't get in a position to be violent, so thank you for finishing just a few minutes before time and setting an example for the rest. Now, without further ado then, I call upon Robert Ssekubugu from Uganda. He is the head of research program in Rakai district, and I've known him for quite a number of years, and you are very welcome, Robert.
Thank you very much, Prof. I'm going to talk with you about a topic I'm very passionate about, which we call the research implementers and their experience with practical ethics. For some of our colleagues in the room who were not with us yesterday, an old man, like he calls himself, from the villages of Tanzania, was very concerned yesterday because we were talking a lot of ethics at system level, as training, etc. But when he's at his farm in the morning, having a cup of tea under the tree, he sees energetic young men and women with backpacks, school boxes, roaming around the villages, collecting data for research. So he was concerned about, why aren't we talking about these people in ethics as much as we should be? We promise that we shall do so. So I want to congratulate Professor Kilama that we are going to discuss research implementers, the young men and women you see with cool boxes, GPS machines roaming in the village. But you are not alone. A group of colleagues, Davis and colleagues, wrote this article, and it was published in 2002, where they described that cadre of people as the invisible hand. So they were trying to tell us that, please, can you see these people, just like the way you were telling us, Professor? Please see these people. I see them in the morning moving and in the evening going home. When I was for the bioethics fellowship, we discussed extensively with Nancy and Adnan about these people. And we thought that we needed to design a study around them and understand them fairly well, with the intention that maybe in future we might want to do more work with them. So we set out to conduct a study. So research ethics issues have been the focus of a very vibrant global discourse in the past decade or decades, and Paul highlighted the progress. Much of the attention has been to improve procedure. We've discussed a lot about hierarchy review, quality of review, training new members, and leadership, etc. a little bit. However, there are other aspects related to recruitment of a study participant, retention, informed consent process that emerge during the golden interaction between a study staff and a participant. So I want to indicate to this meeting today that we have realized along the way, something that we never thought about earlier, that there are different tribes of research implementers out there. And we have to be very careful when we talk about implementers. For example, there are implementers within a formal health research setting or site, which site could be based at a university or outside of a university, but it's a formal research setting. There are research implementers with dual roles. Now, today when I talk about dual role, I don't mean the specimen worries that ethicists always have, the dual role of misuse of specimens, but the dual role of a research implementer. For example, a research implementer is a clinician at a health facility, but we are trying to quote cast, but also document good practices. So this clinician is expected to fill some forms, consent people. So he's also there struggling to play the dual role. There are research implementers who we want to define as occasional research implementers. If you walk out of this building, you will see they are calling them. Come, we need somebody to collect data for between now and Christmas time. Then they go. So they are very occasional, and all over the world they are there. And they have been involved in all sorts of data gathering endeavors. For doctoral students, they are in the national census, in the district census. They are polling agents in case there is an election coming. They are registrars. They are on the national. They are working on everything. They implement ethics depending on how they assess the shallowness or the depth of the investigator's ethics interest. So there are aspects of study administration that they look within their lenses and see how much ethics do your participants deserve. And so many other tribes you can think about. But why do these implementers matter in this discourse, ethics discourse? You know they are so central. the invisible hand, they are so central in the study implementation roles. If you've been a bride or a groom, certainly nobody has been both. If you've been a bride or a groom, and you have been interacting with your wedding planner or the organizing committee, the family committee that is helping you organize a wedding, you know the meaning of organizing a wedding and what it means on the wedding day. This is what happens if some of you haven't been brides or grooms. After you have said I do, which is largely the interaction between the RB and the research, so you've said I do, and now it's all right. You are going to head to the reception. At the reception, you will meet guests who might be study participants, etc. As a bride or a groom, your job at the reception is to try and smile. Regardless of whether things are going as per plan or not, you're expected to keep a smile. And your wedding planner or your organizing committee is going to take charge. If you have been talking about beers so much in the last couple of preparation weeks, they will deliver enough beers. If you've not been talking about beers, they will deliver water or something. So that is what happens with research implementation. Whether you like it or not, this important endeavor is going to get out of your hands and get out of the hands of the IRB, and it will go into another set of hands. So we have to think about the entire continuum. When you are selecting the chairman of your wedding committee, you have to know that you'll have enough control over them. Even at the time of the smile, you should be able to wink. So, we realized the importance of these implementers, like I told you earlier. So we set out to study these implementers' experiences with ethics to begin with. So I shall say a few things about our implementer study, but also share a few other things that we did not study. The setting of our study, to begin with, is a formal health research setting. It's a formal health research setting, and as heads up, that is a setting that ethicists should worry less about of all the settings that but it also has a set of issues. I was looking at our IRB report. We have a column there about that says where does this protocol get implemented and by who. And these kinds of formal research health settings, at least from IRB, contribute only 27%. A big chunk of the research comes as programmatic research, and occasionally, the occasional research implementers are required in this program to do what people call evaluation, etc., because they are using money that is not supposed to be for research, but to document important things. So in other words, it is research called something else. So the objective of our study was to document perspectives of this important cadre with enforcing ethics principles and processes. We wanted to describe the challenges and innovative ways of enforcing ethics from their viewpoint. We wanted to be helped. This is how we coined it in their consent form. We want you to help us understand what we can do differently to enforce ethics better. Many times I display pictures in the slides and they are not my picture. This time I said it should be my picture. This is a re-interview session. So many times at the site where I work, after people have collected the data, we sample a few. So we go back and re-interview and try to compare and see how much level of consistency we can get. Our implementers don't like this. They really, really get mad the morning I say I'm going. But we do it. So our methods, we chose a mixed methods study design. So we had a survey and FGDs. The primary method was a self-administered survey using a modified tool. So we got some tools from many places, and looked at what people have been asking researchers, senior researchers, etc., and we tried to customize some of the questions. The survey had 6 major domains and so many minor ones. It was pre-tested with 6 African student scholars in this school who provided critical feedback. So we got some MPH, people from Africa and asked them, what do you think about this tool? And it received a good accuracy of interpretation score after their feedback. So, during implementation at the departmental level, during monthly meetings at the study site, I would go to the department and explain people in that, the implementers in that department, the study, and request for participation. Those of us who participated in a study yesterday, you saw that version of consenting. Dr. Adnan was an implementer. But I did it fairly slower than he does it, in terms of going through the material, but something like that. But we also had page 1 of the tool and page 2 as information, and that's where they appended their signature. We distributed the survey to all potential participants at the site in khaki envelopes, A4 khaki envelopes. So we gave at the end of the meeting, etc. questions, we give everyone present a survey, and it's up to them to fill or not. And they take it with them home. Implementers who completed the survey dropped it in a wooden locked box located conveniently. So we had 3 wooden boxes at different places, and people would fill the survey at leisure, come and fill it in, and put it in the wooden box, locked, and the keys kept by myself. The boxes were opened at the end of the data collection period, which was about 2 months. So we thought that after 2 months, we should just open and say the data collection has ended. So we gave out 161 questionnaires. We received back 111 questionnaires, 3 of which have not been included in this analysis for gross incompleteness. The distribution in gender was about half. The duration of implementation, about 60% of the participants had been at this site implementing studies for 1 to 5 years. We had different categories of implementers, including data collectors, data quality controllers, team leaders, counselors, nurse clinician, phlebotomist, etc. We also labored to understand their age distribution, and the majority of them were in the age of 20 to 30s, which explains why the old man in Tanzania sees young men and women with GPS machines and cool boxes. Their level of education was mostly diploma. So a diploma in this study is not a document, a certificate. It's a level of training that is between a certificate and a bachelor's degree. So these were clinical officers, nursing officers, fairly well-trained people, professionals. Research ethics training ever was almost 100%. Was almost 100%. So that's why I later think that maybe this wasn't typical enough, but still important. So these are some of the aspects we explored, and we can pay more attention to the aspects I've highlighted in red. So we set out to ask implementers to focus on the last interview. Please focus on the last interview and tell me how things went. Assess this person's understanding of the concept of this is a research. And 57% of the participants said that the last interview we had, it was problematic to help someone understand that this is research. In fact, one of our colleagues, when we were having a discussion, told us a very small story about how it is difficult to tell someone that this is research. And one day he tried to tell somebody, thank you very much for coming. I expect to see you in 2 weeks. Please take care of yourselves, bye-bye. And then this lady said, thank you, doctor, for the treatment. Said, no, 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 no. This is not treatment. Like I told you, it is research. Said, doctor, I know you are trying to be polite, but this is treatment. And thank you very much for the treatment. So it is difficult, but sometimes it's because of word vocabulary shortage. And we shall see if we want to discuss that further. On Monday, we discussed extensively about biobanking. At the last interview of 108 people, 73% of the implementers said that this concept was complicated. To tell people that this blood, my blood is in my body. If it gets into a tube, is it still my blood? Yes, it is your blood, and we want to store it. And does it make sense? What do you mean exactly? Do people keep blood that is not in their body for what? I don't know. So it's a complex issue to disseminate. Clarity of translation of forms and then size of informed consent stood out as problematic areas according to implementers' last interview. Most of the implementers' last interview had happened the day before, and for some that day. So let's start with translation. I told you we had a mixed methods approach. 51% of the participants indicated that some aspects of consenting information were improperly translated. So when we translate these forms, we affect the flow if we are not careful. The flow of the information as you read it to someone is so bad. We kill the content, the context is inappropriate, and they lose control of the process. Your IC forms keep repeating the same thing saying what they do not want to say and not saying what they want to say. So the implementer is saying that our informed consent forms don't say, because they know what the study is about, and say, your form is not saying the study what you want the study to be. So this is the fundamental problem. IRBs, local IRBs, international IRBs, only trust certified translations from local universities' language departments. So this is, Professor is looking at the watch, but I'm looking at my last slides, maybe 3, 4 also. So this is something I cut off a consent form. The stamp-bearing Makerere Office of the Chair, Department of African Languages, Makerere University, and IRB will trust that form. But that form hasn't been translated in context. It has been translated properly, accurately, but not in the proper context. So IRB, these consent forms are a problem. The way we do them, and we can talk further about them. Informed consent forms are too long. We have discussed this with the, under different folders. The form was too long. It doesn't get it. No way, too long. It wears someone out. I deliberately made sure that you see the page numbering at this consent form. This is a Luganda consent form that came out of a 2-page English consent form certified by an American IRB with a very, very good readability score of maybe a 4th grader. Very, very nice. When you translate it, you get 7 pages, and that is the wording. You open it, and we train them to read word by word. So that is a bit of a problem. You might have realized that, so these consent forms are not really the problem. The problem is bigger than the forms. And I was thinking, Masia here is my good friend, myself, Professor Tangwa. When we put our hands to say something, Adnan is going to say, Masia, 1 minute. Okay, go, 1 minute. Because I call it the 3D explanation. We are breastfed in a language that gives a 3D form of explanation, like this, in case they didn't understand here, but also here. So the languages are either so detailed because of whatever reason, I don't know. So these consent forms keep growing and they become bigger, and that's an area that I think we need to try and understand what goes on there. So 73% of the participants indicated that elements on specimen storage were problematic, like I indicated. Where I work, we had some troubles actually, because at some point we wanted to store tissues for skins. And there had been it started very well. And along the way, someone said on the radio that a foreskin is sold in Canada at 63 million Uganda shillings. That is about 30,000 US dollars. So if you have a foreskin, you are so rich. You are so rich, you just haven't harvested that wealth. So people are having troubles with all these things. But going through that process of explaining is really the best thing, actually. The worst thing is when people don't bother. Because you have an obligation to explain these biobanking issues that will end into genetic research. A principal investigator who came to explain why he insists he wants to write a certain statement in the consent form made us laugh at an IRB. Agre is a hypothetical name. He told us that they had a CAB meeting. They invited the CAB and leaders in the community to come to the site. So they had a site tour. They got to the freezer room. And he told them, this is where we keep the blood. And they told him, oh, that's good. Can we look at the blood? He said, yeah, sure. So they opened the freezer, and he pulled out these small vials with the colorless substance. And they said, this can't be blood. Are you all right? So they were, do we store blood, or we store plasma, or we store, what do you store? And what is the interpretation? So the issue of storage is complex in a variety of different ways, because the Community Advisory Board was expecting to see the large containers or the syringes with the blood they give, but you're showing them vials with a colorless substance and calling it blood. So, storage. 71% of the participants reported challenges explaining research, etc., as therapeutic misconception. So, implementers with dual roles, we are not going to talk much about that because we don't have a piece of study data along there, but clearly you know that they struggle to try and balance between their obligation as clinicians and as researchers. And many studies have actually been closed in Uganda through the monitoring exercise because implementers and study participants mix and can't find the lines. But this cadre contributes about 31% of the studies. And this is one of the major limitations for the study I presented earlier because we are focusing on one type of implementer. The dynamics of occasional research implementers is even more complex. So research implementers can be an important force in helping to shape ethics practice and training models of implementers. We think that we need to engage them to help us determine what kind of support implementers need. Okay, at our study site, the implementers do consenting document translation. So when we go to the Institute of Languages, because our collaborating IRBs need the other stamp, we go with the translated version. We've already come up with an MOU for people not to because our implementers translate better than the University Department of Languages. We need to do something differently about the consenting process. Otherwise, in its current state, the principle of respect for person is not sufficiently addressed. Different implementer tribes require different levels of support, etc. I don't think I have responded to the concerns of the old man in Tanzania village about the backpack and the school box boys and girls, but the intention was not to do that. The intention was to stimulate thinking. And I want to thank you very much for your time.
Oh, thank you very much, Robert, for that, although you exceeded your time. But I thought, you had ways of putting it, and the question I raised yesterday, it seems has stimulated quite a bit of thought, and we thank you very much. And now may I call upon Caroline Kithinji, who will have 10 minutes, and she is going to be making comments on research ethics committees in Africa. She's from Kenya, and she has quite a lot to say, but 10 minutes, please.
Okay. Joe, can you come and help me? Me? No. The tall man from Africa. Okay. Right, so I was just asked to comment. I think that's what they say, comments on research ethics committees in Africa, operational challenges and strategies. The only qualification I've put there is CIP. Please clap for me. It took me. Certified IRB professionals, it is a killer examination. 250 questions MCQ, 4 hours to do it, very tricky. We began reading in February, and we read 3 days of every week until we did the exam. All right, so I'm going to make some comments about operational challenges. I have worked in an IRB as a member and the administrator for about 10 years. So I also have a little bit of experience about how things can change. So I won't talk about all of these. I've only been given 10 minutes, and Robert ate some of my 10 minutes at his wedding, when his wedding was going wrong. But I'll talk about commitment, resources. I won't say anything about training. I think Paul did an excellent job talking about training. Dual review, which is my pet subject at the moment, then perception and communication. So what do I mean when I say commitment? We want people who are willing and available. Often the spirit is very willing, but the body is very weak. So what happens is that they want to be part of the committee, but they don't want to attend the meetings. There are 12 meetings in the year, they want to attend 4. Okay. So we tell them, if you're not going to attend a meeting, please send your comments, which they do. So it's the dilemma. Do we want them at the meeting, or do we want their comments? So to encourage them to come to the meetings, we don't pay them the full amount. If, let's say, you're supposed to get $10 for attending a meeting and sending your comments, if you only send your comments, you get $7. That's a disincentive for not coming for the meeting. So we have people who come to the meeting and start reviewing at the meeting. So they don't pay attention to anybody else because they are busy reviewing their proposal at the meeting. There are those who come in, and within half an hour, they have written a note to the chairman saying they have other pressing duties. But they make sure they write their name in the book that is going to allow them to get paid their $10. There's a book that goes around for that. So we struggle a lot with commitment in our ethics committees. We don't really struggle in getting people on the committees, but once they're there, we don't know how to make sure that they actually are there. This one, the perception of the researcher. This is a big one. You can see the cartoon says most scientists regarded the new streamlined peer review process as quite an improvement. You can see swords and machetes and axes. Unfortunately, many researchers think that's the way we do things. They just know that we want to stop them from doing research. And it's been quite a problem trying to change their point of view. I'll give you some of the strategies that we used. But I think we also contributed to it as ethics committees because we don't tell people what is happening. So it's like once your proposal is received at the ethics committee, you don't know if it's in the agenda, you don't know if it's been discussed, you don't know anything. You're just being told, wait, wait, we shall get back to you. And I think that one also has contributed to the perception of the researchers. And then some of the comments that we give. Kindly revise the informed consent document. Which part? It's 7 pages long. Which one? What part of it do you want me to revise? So on and so forth. So some of the comments that we give also make it difficult for the researchers to know what we're up to. This one, resources. Well, I have moved on from here. My office no longer looks like this. But resources is a big, fat, enormous elephant in the room, pink, yellow, orange. And it's something we're going to continue to struggle with. Again, I'll tell you a few things that have happened at our institute to make it easier. But you do need paper, you need photocopiers, and again, we shall refer to the grandfather of ethics. Amanet really made a big change for many ethics committees in Africa because we got a little bit of money to just put the very basic of things that we needed in the office. So resources, I'm talking about human resources, research administrators or IRB administrators. I'm talking about people to do the review. I'm talking about people to write the letters. Those are the resources I'm talking about. And also just some incentive for the secretariat because they work very hard. At the moment, we receive close to 1,500 proposals a year at KEMRI, a third of which are initial proposals. That is a lot of work. I describe myself as an air traffic controller, and truly that's what it is. Planes landing, planes taking off, planes circling, planes. That's what you wake up to. So resources, especially human resources, is a big thing because many of us began when we were everything. Dual review is another challenge, operational challenge that we have. Question, who should review first? Should the external IRB review first or should the local one? What does it mean when an REC or ERC is the ERC of note or record? What does that mean? Does it mean you have the last word? So these things are said very nicely, talked about very well in the Declaration of Helsinki, but what does it actually mean? Now you're implementing it, so what do you decide? How many reviews are required? Multi-center trials, often we have more than one site in Kenya for one study. A malaria study would have many sites across the world, but in Kenya we'd have 4 or 5. So do we all need to review the same proposal? It is the same proposal coming from GSK. Do we all need to review it? Can the external IRB have the final word? This happens a lot. We review it, and then it is reviewed again by the external IRB. What do we do with their comments? They make several comments. Is our document the final document? All of these questions are challenges we are facing with dual review. And again, at the end, I'll show some of the things we've tried to do to overcome that challenge. So these are the strategies, or what you can call best practices. When you're talking about perception strategies, we have tried to improve communication. We are allowing people to know that your proposal has been accepted. It will be in the agenda for the 6th of December. Even that information we didn't want to give. When do we expect an answer? 5 working days after the meeting. Things like that. They are very small, but they allay the anxiety of the investigator and help them to plan a little bit. So that's what we've tried to do. We've tried to have an ERC open day where we just invite people to come and ask all kinds of questions. It's quite fashionable now. We have a Ministry of Health, a Ministry of Justice open days. We have participated in science cafes. This is something the Wellcome Trust was trying out, where they just go to a cafe. They've sent out word in the social media that we're going to be discussing ethics. Anybody who's interested comes, and as long as they're not drinking alcohol, you can have your cup of coffee, and you can have a discussion about ethics. We've done that. That's very helpful. And also, because we're an agricultural country, we have agricultural shows annually. We also try to be present at those shows and give out pamphlets and explain what we're doing. So we are trying to improve. And again, many of these things, because of the money from Amanet, we were able to do. Is my 10 minutes over? I can see you're fidgeting. One more slide. Resources. I am very proud about how far we've moved with this resources issue. We now have a budget line in our institution for ethics review and the secretariat. I mean, please clap for that. Yes, it's very, very important. Because that is sustainable. Amanet came and went, the old man remained, thank Yahweh. But EDCTP will come and go, so how do we sustain? So that is one thing. We have a budget line now, and then payment for review is also something that we use, which is quite helpful, fees levied for review and so on. We also employed interns. Now our partners, we have many, really wanted to help. Even the pharmaceutical companies really wanted to help, but we used to wonder, if we accept money from GSK, for example, does it mean when the proposal comes through, you're going to have to, conflict of interest. This is what I mean. And then we hit upon this idea that give us money and we'll employ interns. So we kind of got around the issue of conflict of interest. And the beauty of interns is that you can work them to death. You can really work them, and secondly, they are there for 3 months. If they don't like it, they go. If you don't like them, they go. It was much easier than trying to deal with people like me who are permanent and pensionable. You have to write me 3 warning letters before you sack me, and I can still refuse to be sacked. But with these other ones, there was a bit of more an incentive. So if that's possible for you, I think employing interns has helped. We've gotten very, very good work out of them. Dual review, we are still dialoguing. You have to keep talking, always trying to understand one another, but something tangible are the reliance agreements. So there are some things, some studies with some of our partners where they just say for this particular study, they will not review. So the external IRB does not review. It is only our IRB or ERC that reviews. That's worked very well. For commitment, I told you about the disincentives. You only get $7 instead of 10. But we also do half-yearly performance appraisals. This got us into a lot of trouble. Our members were furious. But they started coming for meetings, and they started reviewing. Yeah, when they saw that they are attending 20% of the meetings, they're reviewing only a third of their proposals, they got up. They got embarrassed. And lastly, awards or rewards. So like now, we have 5 members of my secretariat. 3 of our chairmen are going to be attending Prima. I can't tell you how much of an incentive that is, more than putting anything in anybody's salary. And that has really worked for us. Where you'll get the money to do that, I don't know. But I'm done. Asante sana.
I speak in a language she understands. Asante sana, Caroline. Thank you very much. That's what I meant. So that has really been an award to all of us. And now we go to the last paper. And this is on the same area. And it's by is it Dr. Miss Dimpho Ralefala. You're welcome, from Botswana. You have also 10 minutes.
Thank you, Prof. Good afternoon, all. Prof, did you just award me a PhD? Did you just award me a PhD?
Yes. With the powers vested in.
Thank you. Yes, it's a wonderful privilege for me to be part of this discussion today. Caroline and Paul has already outlined some of the critical challenges that are faced by research ethics committees in Africa. And I'll also try to highlight some of issues that I think needs our attention. Okay, sorry for that. Yes, I'll also be commenting on the challenges and strategies that IRBs can adopt to deal with the challenges. And I'll basically be using the University of Botswana as a case study for my presentation. In Botswana, we do have the Anthropological Research Act of 1967, And currently, this is the legislation that is available to govern the conduct of research within the country. This legislation was established in response to an influx of anthropological research that was happening in the country during those times. And the government thought it is wise to come up with this legislation to regulate the conduct of research. So as years went by, the government eventually realized that there were many other numerous research that are not anthropological that were taking place in the country. So they developed the research permit guidelines of 2007. And these guidelines require that everyone conducting research within the country, regardless of the theme or the area, they have to get a research permit from the relevant government ministry. This means that if you are doing research, for example, on health-related issues, you have to get your research permit from the Ministry of Health. And if you are doing research on educational-related issues, whether you are involving women participants or not, you have to get your research permit from the Ministry of Education. So now at the University of Botswana, we do have the Office of Research and Development, which tries to coordinate the review of research. Under the Office of Research and Development, there's a research unit, research ethics unit, which coordinates the functioning of the IRB and the review of research. For research that is conducted purely inside the university, you are not interacting with participants from outside the university, that research is exempted from research permit requirements. This background was just to help you get an understanding of the environments that we are operating in Botswana. So there are a number of challenges that we are facing as research ethics committees operating within Botswana. One of these challenges is it is really a challenge. We are still struggling as research ethics committees in Botswana to get the buy-in and support of leaders. So this obviously creates a very challenging environment for research ethics to operate under. There are also issues of capacity. While we have research ethics committees like the one in the University of Botswana, which has a good amount of support, we also have others elsewhere, like mostly the ones operating in hospitals that do not have so much support and are faced with challenges of infrastructure, where you find the research ethics committee operating without an office or even without a dedicated administrator. Maybe someone who is a member or someone who is interested in research ethics within the hospital may volunteer as a secretary, something like that. And this is very difficult, even for the function of the research ethics committee. It is also even difficult for the researchers because sometimes researchers don't know who to submit their proposals to. They don't know who to consult if they have issues about research ethics or ethical clearance processes within the hospital. There are other issues of challenges of training. Well, for us in the University of Botswana, we've been lucky enough to get a lot of training opportunities in research ethics, including the FABT African Bioethics Training Program, which has trained about 7 of our members now, and recently the ARESA, yes, which is going to be training 2 of our IRB members. Most of the research ethics committees in the country, members would have gone up to at most a week-long training, which is not sufficient for someone to assess and review and make a judgment on a research proposal ethically. So the other challenge that we have is that of, I would say maybe of national regulations. As I indicated, our current guideline, our current regulations, that's Anthropological Research Act of 1967. So the document is outdated. Secondly, it does not address most of the issues that we are currently faced with in research ethics. For example, it does not address issues of involving children in research. A lot of the current issues that we are faced in research ethics. The other issue has been the issue of incentives. Our IRB members function on a purely voluntary basis. They are not paid. There is no incentives whatsoever. In the University of Botswana, we only offer them lunch. So that's the only thing that they get for their service in the IRB. So it's, we have had challenges of quorum because most of them also are academicians. They teach, their primary role is teaching, supervising student work, and doing their own research. So we have problems of quorum and commitment of IRB members. The other issue is that because of the overwhelming workload that we have as a committee, we are not able to monitor research. We basically trust that researchers will do the right thing in the field. And this basically means that if there's maybe a protocol violation, we will not know about it. Prof is warning me, so I have to move fast. So I'll now get to the strategies. While it seems that we are faced with a number of challenges, I think they are not insurmountable. There are a number of strategies that have been used elsewhere that we can adapt as a country to improve our IRB processes. One of the recommendations that I would like to make is that I think as a country we need government and institutional commitment for the government to stand up and take the leadership in the issues of research ethics, in capacity building, and even I was jealous to realize that for Caroline, they even have a dedicated budget for research ethics committees, which is something that we don't have as a country. I think we also need the establishment of national oversight bodies. If you have realized, as I indicated, we have several ministries approving research. So this is the review of research in the country is fragmented and it makes it difficult for researchers. So I think we need a national oversight body which will coordinate the ethical conduct of research within the country, setting regulations for the national regulations, registering and accrediting research ethics committees, auditing them to assess if they're actually doing what they're set to do, and even acting as an adjudication authority in case there are issues with IRBs. The other thing that I think we also need is the development of local bioethics training programs. Currently, we do not have any formal course, any formal training for bioethics, although we do offer workshops and some short courses sometimes. We do offer workshops to our researchers mostly. Research ethics committees operating elsewhere do not have a resource for them to get trained in the country. The last thing, okay, Prof is really warning me. The other thing that is a strategy that we are thinking of adopting is of doing rec mentoring, where because the University of Botswana is currently the one that is a bit more experienced, to work with less experienced research ethics committees to mentor them, where we can share documents, share SOPs, consent documents, and help them to start off. And also the use of electronic monitoring systems. Since we are established as an IRB, we've been using a manual system that involves recording physically, duplicating proposals and run around the university campus to distribute them. So it's a lot of work because we also receive a lot of proposals from the university community. And basically this is what takes a lot of our time as administrative staff. We spend most of the time in this cycle and we are not able to do anything else in the office. But we've been lucky to learn this year that the university has committed to invest on electronic monitoring system that we can use as an IRB. So with that, I'll say thank you. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. I didn't want to be accused of, you know what. So thank you very much. And you can see the contrast between the two countries. So there is a lot of progress, and someone has actually even make more progress. So now the speakers are invited to come, and the panelists to sit up front, all four of them, and then please, questions will be invited to each. We have to use the microphones, otherwise we will not get heard across the world. We are still across the world? Yes. Okay, good, yes, yes. Please. Mm-hmm. Okay, questions, comments? I'm sorry if I say you, be understanding, please. I better start, yes, please.
Thank you very much, Prof. My name is Francis Masir. I'm a research fellow at the University of Cape Town in South Africa, but I'm originally from Malawi. I have a question for Dimpho and Caroline. And my question is that I would like to know how much you charge your researchers for application fees and overhead fees to your institutions, and how you utilize those funds.
Okay, so that's one question. I'll take 4 questions, and then they'll be directed to different people. Okay, I'll go to the back. Yes, Prof?
Thank you very much. My name is Ademola Jumo from University of Ibadan. My question goes to Paul. It caught my attention that almost more than half of the implementers said they have trouble with informed consent form. And I wanted to find out whether you have related this challenge to the type of research that the implementers were trying to explain in the consent form, or this is irrespective of the type of research. In other words, I'm saying that is this difficulty related to the complexity of the research, or something else is going on? The second question is that who are these implementers? Are they permanent staff that were hired by the agency, or these are ad hoc staff that you recruit as at when you need them? Because if they are permanent staff, then the experience they have accumulated over the years should help them to actually explain things properly to the research participants. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. We have taken, okay, now I go to Mary.
My name is Mary Kasule, Research Ethics Administrator from Botswana. My question goes to the groups that charge for ethics review. There was a discussion about the ethics of it. Isn't the committee going to, approve because they want to get more money? Are the reviewers not going to review because they want to be paid? So I wonder how they go about that conflict of interest.
Mm-hmm. Okay, one more, please.
Yeah, I'm Julius Ngobegai from Cameroon. My question goes to Caroline. You say you now have a budget line for your IRB. Congratulations. But where is it coming from? Ministry or private? And then how do you lobby for that budget line? Thank you.
Okay, so there are questions, I guess, for almost for all our speakers. And you can choose, maybe we better start from, no, we say ladies first. We used to say that, so you go ahead, Caroline. Okay.
Yes, thank you very much. For us at the University of Botswana, we do not charge for IRB. Let me just say, in the country of Botswana, ethical clearance is not charged for you. You just submit your proposal and the committees review for free. And that is basically why I was now trying to commit our government to set up a budget line for our research ethics committees, because we do it for free.
Anyone else on that question?
Yes. How much do we charge? We charge $1,000 per study. We went for broke. We didn't charge for so many years then. When we decided to charge, we decided to just go for broke. However, we only charge institutions that are not Kemri, from outside Kemri. So we charge NGOs, we charge pharmaceuticals, Pop Council, that kind of thing. So we charge 1,000, and when we wanted to start charging that 1,000, we were warned that we're not going to have many people coming for review at Kemri, and I can tell you that was not true. Yeah, so that's what we charge. What do we use the money for? We use the money to run the office. So staples, paper, photocopying. We need people to come in for our meetings. We pay for their flights. We do some training, and we also do some monitoring. So that's what we use. The budget line, how did we get this budget line?
Excuse me, before we continue, does anyone else have a comment on, do you charge in Zimbabwe?
Thank you. Yes, in Zimbabwe we charge. So we charge $10 for undergraduates, $50 for masters, $500, $200 for PhDs, $500 for the professional researchers. There was the question of conflict with Mary, who asked that question. So basically, we've tried to build in some mechanisms to ensure that we bring in external reviewers into that process. They have nothing to do with what the money is going to be used for. And the Secretariat is actually the one that looks at issues of the monies, but then the decisions are made by a committee, and that committee represents different institutions within the country. Thank you.
Okay, other questions not answered? How about the consent form?
Well, there's a question about what kind of implementers these ones are and whether the comprehension of the consent form differs by study type. We are working with a very small sample size, and we had very much wanted to do that kind of thing, but when you try to do that sub-analysis, you stay with 10, 12 people in a clinical trial, you stay with 30 people in a cross-sectional study X, or a few people in the cohort study. So it's not a very good analysis to do with the data we have. But in other studies, it has been discovered that when research implementers, or when researchers, the senior now, when they perceive their study to be high risk, they will pay more attention to the consenting process and other ethical issues. So they will explain the processes better, etc. But with the current data, we don't know, because our samples shrink whenever I want to do those kinds of interesting sub-analysis. These implementers are more of permanently, not permanently, with a long-term contract to implement a study in a formal research establishment. And it is because of their experience with ethics that they are able to tell you what doesn't work. I'm thinking that if the implementers, we have to design a very different kind of tool to design people who have less exposure to ethics training and things like that. But they can tell you that despite our commitment, or despite the obligation that we know we have to accomplish, this is a problem. So they are experienced enough. I told you the majority of them have been exposed into this work for 1 to 5 years, or over 50% of them.
Okay, Caroline, you had, there was a question on
The budget
consent
line.
form. Huh? Pardon? Yes, Caroline?
The budget line, how we got it.
The budget line, yes, please.
Okay, what we did is, first of all, we
requested the board to have an independent scientific and ethics unit in the institution. That's the first thing we asked for, because what happened is that we used to be in the administration section, and KEMRI often asks for overheads from studies, and that money was supposed to trickle down, and it never reached. So we requested for the unit, and the board approved the unit. Once the board approved the unit, then it required a budget line because it was taken like one of the centers or units of the institution. So it is the Kenya Medical Research Institute, not the Ministry of Health. And so once we had the unit, then we were asked to give a budget because that's how the system goes, which we did. We gave them a budget of 10 million. They told us, sorry, 2 million. I said, okay, fine, we'll take the 2 million. And that's how it's Kenya shillings. I don't know how many dollars that is. Not dollars, certainly. Yeah, so that's how we did it. So we kind of did it backdoor. Yeah, so that by the time they realized what we were up to, it was already done.
Okay, very good. We can take on 3 more questions, please.
Mine is not a question, I want to share an experience about this issue of translating the consent form in our local languages. In Kinshasa, we had an experience assessing how accurate was the translation. And we tried the back translation by someone who is not in the area of what we do. And after this, people from the Faculty of Arts and Good Science and Literature, etc., translated the best way from the Bible, Lingala. We sent the message, the consent form to the other people to translate it into English or French. Oh my goodness. It was totally other thing. Then we said, why don't we try the Lingala which is spoken by the people? We just called someone in the community, could you translate this from French to Lingala, the common Lingala? And when we tried the back translation, it was 89 or 90% accurate. Then I said, why do we use this French from those people or Lingala from those people in those schools? Just use what people use normally in their conversation, and that will make it more accurate than translating those people who ask too much money to be paid for it. Thank you.
I know, they are very expensive.
Okay, that's quite a lesson for all of us. Huh? Yes, Godfrey? Wait for the microscope, it's coming.
Well, okay. 2 short questions. One to Dimpho and the other to Kithinji. Well, you said at the University of Botswana, internal university research is exempt from permit. I suppose in the context of the distinction we were making about ethics clearance and administrative authorization, this would relate to administrative authorization. I hope the research still goes through ethics clearance. And what qualifies as internal university research? And do you think it is a good idea to exempt it from permit? Then the other question is, well, we've discussed fees, the payment of fees by researchers and the payment of fees to reviewers. As far as payment of fees for protocols, I don't think there has been much debate except that how much should be charged for the various categories of research. But paying for the review is a bit problematic. And I'm asking you that in the light of your experience, since you say you've been paying your reviewers, do you think it is a good thing to be paying people for reviewing.
Okay, so that's one question. Yes, in the back, sir.
Yes, thank you. I would deviate from the normal procedure because I think there's something that needs to be shared. And the person that I'm going to ask to share with us may be surprised. Because from yesterday at the reunion, we are talking about electronic submissions. I would want John, who's here, who is the director of the IRB at Hopkins, to share with us colleagues from Africa about their own experience with electronic submissions, because we may learn that it's not really the panacea to the problems of submissions.
We'll ask Joe later on to make that comment. Okay, one more. So there are no more comments or questions. Now we can get replies. We start with you, Joe.
I'm Joan Pettit, the director of the IRB here at the School of Public Health. For all of you I haven't met, how are you? And thank you for coming. I've told George my thoughts. We have an electronic submission system that is incomplete. I've been here since 2008, and it is incomplete. And we've been working on it the entire time. If you are going to have an electronic submission system, you're going to need programmers who will keep it up to date, bring every new patch and upgrade into the system, and also take care of it when it's not working. Our most valuable electronic tool is the IRB database tracking system that is a SQL product, I believe. I'm not an IT person, but it's just a simpler database where you can keep track of the workflow in your office. Our paper system is very efficient. So when you're husbanding your resources, I just think it's worth considering getting a good paper system and hiring good people and paying your members and your staff, because that expertise, if you don't have much turnover, will last longer than your electronic system.
Thank you for that comment. There was, now you can get replies from the panelists.
Prof. Tangwa, sorry I wasn't clear in my presentation. When I was referring to exemption of internal research, meaning research that is conducted basically within the university premises, but conducted on university students or staff or using university facilities, and we are not involving anyone else without the university campus. This research will be exempted from the government research permits. The government research permit is the final approval that you get when you are doing research elsewhere within the country. So what happens is that for research that is done only within the university, you will still go through the ethical process through the university IRB, which will give you internal approval. And that internal approval is what exempts you from the need to get a research permit from the government. This is basically because the research permit guidelines says that you get a research permit from the government ministry that deals with the portfolio or the theme of your research. So this basically means that when you are doing research within the university, it's not relevant to any particular government ministry, but relevant to the university. So you don't need a research permit in that case. I hope this is clear.
Okay, to respond to Prof. Tangwa about paying reviewers. Well, first of all, let me say that we have not been able to get researchers from Cambridge to pay. Our board of management has really not wanted that to happen, but we've been pushing for it so that it's a little bit even, so that even if we don't charge $1,000, we charge something. Now, for the reviewers, we don't actually pay them. Reviewers are given a travel reimbursement So from wherever they come from, they're given some money. If they've used their car, if they've used any means of transport to come for the meeting, that's what we give them. For the KEMRI members, because we have reviewers that are not from KEMRI, for the KEMRI members like myself, the Kenya government kindly pays me my salary every month, and that is what is my payment for review. So for the KEMRI members, we don't get any money. The question that Mary asked about whether there is some kind of conflict of interest because people are paying for review, I would say no, as he said, because the ethics committee members don't know. They don't get to see that money at all. It's only the secretariat that gets to see that money, and not even all of us, the madam in charge. What has happened though, once we started charging for review, we became a little bit keener and more careful to make sure that people got onto the agenda, because you know somebody has paid $1,000. So you can't fool around, you have to just make sure. So it has helped us become more efficient because of that $1,000 that we receive.
Paul, do you have a comment on that?
Yes, regarding payments to reviewers, in Zimbabwe, we actually pay the reviewers. So we've got a system where once we receive the proposal, we send it out to 3 reviewers who are experts in that specific area before it is then taken to the committee itself for the final determination. So we pay the reviewers, and since we started paying those reviewers, we have seen them providing some very, very useful reviews, and it's done in the shortest of periods. So we're very, very proud that in fact we have brought some efficiency into the whole system. If we find that some reviewers are not serious about their reviews, those who just say approve as presented without some serious inputs, then we always strike them off our list. And if you also find that there are some reviewers who go very personal and are always attacking the scientists who have written the protocols, we also take some steps. It could be striking them off. So on the whole, payments to the reviewers have improved our system so much. I believe as ethics committees, we have to be very, very practical. It's good to have these discussions about this being unethical or not, but at the end of the day, we have to ask, what kind of service are we providing? For some of the people who are here from Johns Hopkins, who have been dealing with our ethics committee, I know we always receive some very, very positive feedback concerning our efficiencies, but it's also because of those payments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, our panelists.